Alright everyone, so as you get logged into your Surface, there's going to be a couple things that we're going to change in settings right off the bat to make it just better optimize the performance on the device, and then also to make workflow and getting in day-to-day easier. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to check for updates. So in that search bar down below, if you want to do check for updates, have this open up. I have some that are installing right now. Since I don't want to restart, I'll just make sure that I do that at the end before I close out. So if when you open up into this, it has some updates listed. I'm going to have you do install now and then let those work while we're doing the rest of this process. Since some of these have been sitting for quite a bit, just want to make sure that everyone's on those same updates. It'll help with just overall optimization so that you're not running into waiting on those updates the first couple days. Second thing we're going to look at is going to be our default browser. There is an issue with Adobe Photoshop and Microsoft Edge communicating. So we are going to change our default browser to Chrome instead. So if you want to scroll down into this menu, find Google Chrome, and then you're going to set Google Chrome as your default web browser. Third thing we're going to change is going to be looking at pen settings. So if you type in pen, we're going to look for pen and Windows ink settings. And then the screen will look something like this. There's going to be two things that you can change. One is going to be you can change the handedness, so it just helps minimize any kind of pickup when your hand rests against the device. So if you are right-handed, you can change that. I'm left-handed, so I'm going to keep that. And then the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to go down into these additional pen settings. And the third one down should be the ignore touch input when I'm using pen. If this is unchecked, take that moment to check that. This is going to help cut down on just the amount of times that the Surface reads your skin while you're drawing as the mark instead of the pen. So make sure that is on. And then the third thing we're going to look at is going to be battery. So we'll look at the power, sleep, and battery settings. You're going to go to power mode. And then oftentimes when you log into these Surfaces right away, it defaults to recommended. I want you to switch this over to best performance. This is going to help just optimize workflow. It's going to help everything kind of speed up a little bit, whereas that recommended sometimes is a little bit too slow. And since we only work on these devices for about an hour at a time, we don't really need to worry too much about conserving the battery. And then with that, I'm also going to have you check down below here. Sometimes the energy saver will automatically start on. So if this is on as blue right now, I'm going to have you turn that off. So it should be in that white state. And then that'll be it for settings. So I am going to minimize this since those updates are still pending. And then from here, then we're going to start to look at kind of making workflow in our taskbar and Adobe Photoshop a little bit more easy. So you're going to have Microsoft Edge pinned down below. What you can do is you can unpin that from your taskbar. So if you do that right click, you can do unpin from taskbar. And then you can also, if you don't have Chrome open, you can search for it, open it up, and then you're going to pin Chrome instead. So instead of this being unpin, it should be pin. And then the couple things we can actually get rid of down here, if you like to have that be a little bit more minimal, you can unpin the Outlook, and you can unpin Microsoft Teams. You can also unpin the Microsoft Store. We won't use this too much, so there's no really big reason to have it down here. And then the one thing that we're going to pin is going to be Photoshop. So you're going to look for Adobe Photoshop 2025. Some of you might have previous years that are on your device. Do make sure it's that 2025. And then when it loads in, it should be this picture of the toucan with a hat. If it's not that one, you can close out and then go back in. And then while this loads, first time there's a little bit of process on getting logged in. Since we've all set the default browser to Chrome, it should be a lot quicker. If you didn't get a chance to switch that over yet, you're going to run into an issue. So if you haven't changed that, make sure you go back, take the time to change those settings. Otherwise, once you get logged in, it's going to have you sign in. Once this fully loads, I'm going to do continue with Google. And this is going to open a Chrome tab. And then once this opens up, it's most likely going to have you type in your school email address and then type in your username and password through the school portal. And then it's going to loop you back to this page. With this one, you're going to go to company and school account. It should give you either you're all set or it might ask for birthday. Once that's done, you can close out that tab. And then when you go back into Photoshop, this will close out and it's going to bring you into the application itself. At this point, then we're going to pin Photoshop. So right click or do that double click down below. And I'm going to do pin to taskbar. That way, instead of having to search for it, each time I log in, it's just going to be here down at the bottom. I can move that over as well too. And then the last thing we're going to look at is just updating some settings in Photoshop that's going to make overall workflow on our first unit a little bit easier and a little bit more manageable. So the file sizing information here doesn't matter too much, so we're just going to go to create. Once this opens up, it's going to look something like this. We can close out this generative fill. So I can do hide bar for now. And then we're going to look over at this right side. We're going to close out some of these windows that aren't going to be too applicable to our first unit and then change a couple things. So we're going to close out the Properties, Adjustments, Libraries tab. So you'll notice there's a set of bars over on that far right. I'm going to do Close Tab Group. And then I'm going to be left with the Layers menu, which we're going to keep. And then we're also going to keep the Color menu, but we're going to change the type of color menu that we have. So same thing, I'm going to look at those three bars. I'm going to change it to the color wheel. This one can be a little bit more user-friendly as you get started with Photoshop and with this first project. The hue cube that it automatically starts on can be a little challenging to navigate. So I'm going to have you switch over to that one. And then we're going to have just those two over on this side for now. And then the last thing we're going to look at is making sure we can select the two main tools we're going to be using. One is going to be the lasso tool. So you can either find it over in this menu. Others, if you just want to click the L key, like L as in Larry, it'll end up selecting it for you, and it should look something like this. So we want to have that, it should be defaulted into that selection brush tool. We're going to switch that to the lasso tool. And then the other main tool that we're going to use for our first unit is going to be the fill tool. So that'll be the G key, so like G as in George. And then same thing, if you want to do just that key shortcut, then it just automatically highlights it. You can find it over here and you don't have to search for it. And then you'll notice that right now it's set to the gradient tool. We're going to switch this over to the paint bucket tool. So you'll have those two that change. If you ever notice that that's not quite working right, I would say just go in. You're going to do kind of a click and hold until this little menu shows up, and then just make sure that it's set at paint bucket instead of gradient. And then for the lasso tool, that it's on lasso instead of the other three choices that are in here. And that should be it for the overall settings that we're going to have for Photoshop. So I'm going to exit out of this. It's going to keep all those changes that we just put in, so we don't need to save anything. And then since most of you are going to have updates, what I'm going to do is just have you let this pend throughout work time. If it's still going through when we finish up class today, I'll have you just close out of your surface, and then we'll keep letting that load when we get back tomorrow. But for right now, this should be good. If you want to kind of look around, get used to navigating on this device, you're welcome to do so. But that should be everything. Let me know if you have questions.